It's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
It's so interesting. It's interesting.
Welcome to It's So Interesting, where people talk about their work and life experience. I am George Spitzer. I have with me today Frank Goss of Sullivan and Goss, an American gallery in Santa Barbara, California. You have many interests and have to have that because of the artists and the nature of your business. You also run a restaurant right in the middle of the gallery, which is also unusual. The museums have, restaurants and all this.
Exactly.
But this is no museum. This is an active art gallery. And I've not been to many active art galleries with a really good restaurant right in the middle.
Thank you.
Outdoors and all that sort of stuff. Is it worth your trouble? Because it's very labor intensive.
It is unbelievably labor intensive, and we're only open for one meal, lunch. It's sort of hard to make a go of it if you're only open for one meal. We have a really good manager, a woman named Lisa Neustadt, whom you know, and she has been here, I think, 15 years. It's always been a struggle to make a buck or lose a buck. No matter what it is, it's a struggle. And last year she brought home the most successful year in the history of the cafe. It was so stunningly wonderful that we were all kind of unprepared for it at the time. It meant we had to pay taxes for it. We had never paid taxes for it. But by God, that's the best moment to pay taxes, is on a profit. The mixture of art and food is really interesting food. I mean, they're both visual, they're both tactile, they're both art forms, and our sort of enjoyment of that. And they are very different one from the other, as you might well expect. If I buy we keep, as I mentioned, thousands of pieces of art here. Average life here is about 5 years for a painting. And so I buy it on Monday of 2000. I may not sell that for 5, 6, 7 years. The average life of a piece here is 5 years. So I don't know whether I did a good job. I have no idea whether I was successful in the purchase of that until ultimately we sell that. The complete opposite is true of the restaurant. If you make a crummy grilled cheese sandwich, you hear about it within a couple of minutes. And because everybody knows me, all the people who dine here know me. They're saying, "Well, Frank, you really should look into the grilled cheese. There's something wrong with the grilled cheese." And so, yes, there.
So you're dealing with Andrew Wyeth for 1 minute, then you're dealing with grilled cheese, and then you're dealing with a waitress and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah. And of the high forms of art, Andrew Wyeth would be one of the highest, but right up there is a good grilled cheese sandwich.
Also, the people aspect of this. Does this help build your community of collectors?
Well, it was how we sort of structured it to start. You have to go through the gallery to get to the cafe. Built our menu so that people above 50 who were interested in what they ate, so that we're not serving sort of the things that aren't good for you. We're serving really good things for you. We know every farmer, every rancher, every shepherd, every fisherman. We know every single one of them, and we know what they're feeding their flock, or their if it's chickens, what they're feeding their chickens or turkey, or what they're putting into the field in the way of inorganic materials for vegetables. And we don't serve everything we serve here is organic. Now those cost more, right? I mean, an organic head of lettuce costs more than a head of lettuce raised in Mexico. As a consequence, our food is a little more expensive. Maybe not a lot, but maybe 20% more expensive than the next door neighbor. So people who come in here are a little better off. I mean, it's not unusual to see half the judges in town dining in the back, or the district attorney, or the mayor, or people of a lot of real estate transactions happen here, and we often get called to the table for a bottle of champagne to toast the closure of a transaction. As a consequence, the clientele here is educated and moneyed, and that's not an accident. That's on purpose. So those, let's say, 100 people a day that dine in a cafe, they're walking through our gallery, and they're capable of making the purchases. There are people who have enough money that in their discretionary accounts that they can buy a painting or buy a drawing.
You hit a word I wanted to ask you about, discretionary, because all art collecting is discretionary. You don't have to buy a painting, but there is a school of people who buy paintings as an investment. People have stocks, bonds, real estate, gold, silver, and paintings. Which category, other than your own prejudice, is good?
I try really hard to watch the visitors to the gallery. And the guy that's just interested in a good investment, I'm a little less interested in selling him something, because essentially he's going to want the best, lowest price he can find. and he's going to negotiate me down to where I'm really not pleased with the transaction. And I might still do the transaction because we ultimately have to take in a certain number of dollars every day, and that's part of life. But clients who are passionate, maybe my favorite kind of buyer is, let's say, the carpenter who's comes in his work clothes. So maybe you don't want to stand downwind from him because he's worked a hard day in the sun, and he finds a drawing that he really likes, and he brings it up in his hands that are caked in, sort of worked in grime. Fingernails aren't the cleanest you've ever seen, and he lays that like he was laying a baby child on the counter, and he says, I'd like to buy this, but it's too expensive for me. I'd like to make payments. Can you do that? And we're happy to do that. And that's maybe the collector that I am most intrigued by, because they're taking it from the milk money, and they're sacrificing some part. They're not going to go to movies for 3 months. That's somebody who's so in love with this piece of art, and it's never a $50,000 thing or a $100,000 thing. Those guys don't make time payments. It's the guy with a $2,000 and $3,000 painting, and he brings it in, and he, as I said, he obviously thinks of it as a treasure. He holds it like you hold a baby, and he brings it to us, and he says, I just love this. I really can't live without this. So when you say it's not mandatory, it is not mandatory. You're correct. But there are some folks for whom avoiding it is almost a criminal thing, and they really want the thing enough to make real changes in their lives in order to afford it. There are also those collectors who are sufficiently well off that they can kind of buy what they want to buy. There's a joie de vivre that you see in them when they're walking through the gallery. They stop, they linger at the paintings that are favorites of theirs. We kind of are obviously sort of moneyed, and we can walk up to them and say, I see you like that painting. Tell me what it is that intrigues you about that painting. And we're genuinely interested in the response, because we're art dealers. And when they say, well, I like things from the 30s, we say, so happens we've got some other things from the 30s.
Out in the back.
Exactly. When we say to them, so tell us what's in your collection, what's at home in your collection, and they start talking to us about paintings that we know, we are aware that they are sophisticated enough that we don't have to direct them as to how to see the painting. There are other people who look at things and they go, wow, abstract art, I just can't get that. Well, it's an invitation to us as art dealers to help them make the transition into abstract art. So it's a really fun project.
You have all kinds of customers, as you indicated. Is there an engine that pulls the gallery?
Certainly the economy, the general economy. We've only been deathly quiet twice. One was following 9/11. Nobody was in the gallery for 3 months. We just didn't have anybody in here. I mean, we didn't have anybody in here. I don't mean a few people came in. Nobody came in. We were all frightened. We didn't know what had happened.
Yeah, you had to pay the bills, the heating.
Well,
the
no.
Yeah.
The clients were frightened
Oh.
because we didn't know. Are we at war? We just lost 600 people. We lost 2 of the biggest buildings in America. What has happened to our world? And they're frightened. And they just don't buy paintings when they're frightened. Then the recession of 2008 that manifested itself in a pretty sour economy in 2009, it was very evident. Now, people came in, but I would threaten always to put speed bumps in the route into the cafe, because they would come in with their eyes straight forward. They wouldn't look right. They wouldn't look left. Didn't make any difference what we put on the walls. They weren't looking. Move quickly into the cafe and sit down and have their lunch, and then move quickly out. And they just, again, they were frightened. People that, no matter what they were worth, if they were worth $100,000 in 2007, they were worth 70 or 65 2 years later. If they were worth $3 billion, they were worth $2 billion. Nobody suffers that 1/3 loss and doesn't go, wow, is that the start of it? Is that the end of it? Are we going to have another bad year this year? If I was worth $3 million on a year ago, and now I'm worth $2 million, what's next year? Am I going to be $1 million? Am I going to have anything left? And people were too frightened to actually look at art. So those are the 2 times.
Invest in art. And that's when you go out and buy a painting. So
that's right.
It's just like the stock market then.
Yeah.
So the next downturn, come in here.
This is our going into our 30th year. What happens is, I'm sure happens to you and sort of all of us that have a kind of ability to plan our lives. And not everybody can do that. There are lives that are much more urgent than that. We stop spending. We stop all spending. Our dealers never, ever buy a car on time. Ever. When they get that big commission check comes in, they have cash and they go buy the car with cash. Because you don't know if you can make a monthly payment a year from now. You just don't know.
There's no salary job.
No, and so I think all of us are very, very careful, and careful planning has gotten us through this. We have only had one losing year. It was in the year of 2009. We lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Had we not had it in the bank, we would have closed. Sad as that might be, it certainly could have happened. I mean, think of all the businesses that did close. When we started going into the recession in 2007, I sort of did a tabulation of what I thought the art dealer world was like. And I thought, well, we're going to probably lose 10, maybe 20%. Actually, we lost 50%. I mean, half of the art galleries that were in business in 2007 are not in business today. Yeah,
that's sobering.
Pretty rough time, yeah.
Now,
but as to your point of how art is not mandatory, you don't need art in the way that we need food and shelter.
But your soul needs it. So.
I actually think for those people like me, you need it just like you need food and shelter. We take, I don't know, probably 2 paintings home a year, and we thoroughly enjoy them. We get a lot out of them. The thought of living in my house without art, first of all, it's a kind of crummy old claptrap of a house. And then I have to look at the walls, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. So I'm much happier to have artwork.
It's the same with me. Jane and I, when we buy paintings, we don't even think about reselling them. We just want to enjoy them while we're here.
I know. See, that to me is the real, that's that joie de vivre that I was telling you about, that people who love them for what they are, the investment issue, does it match the couch? They're not interested in any of that stuff. They just like the painting. It's its own excuse.
Thank you for taking your time to be with us, Frank.
You're welcome.
If you want to contact Frank, you go to the website for It's So Interesting, and there's the information.
Good. Well, thank you, George. It's a pleasure.
So interesting.
It's so interesting.
So interesting. It's interesting.